We're going to talk about different types of common and uncommon gardening methods. And, you think, oh, well, I know all of them. Well, good. But there's many gardeners who have gardened for the very first time this year that are not aware that there are so many. And we're just going to cover, we've got about 14 or 15 on the list here that we're going to try to go over. There are dozens of different types of particular methods in which people can grow produce indoors, outdoors, and year-round.
Right. So I think the one that we can talk about is hugelkultur.
Well, let's go through the common ones first. Let's not just ditch them and go, oh, you're common folk. So we're just going to, no. Ground gardening is the traditional ground gardening is what many people do. Container gardening, those of you who are not able to dig in the ground. And container gardening can be a multitude of devices. You can go on the balcony or the patio, porch, deck, apartment, whatever you want to do with that. You can certainly do it that way. Raised beds is another easy way to do such.
I just want to say this about container gardening. Maybe you can dig in your ground and you're just like, I don't want to explore that. Or maybe you just, you don't have good soil.
You don't
have good soil. Maybe you don't have the correct sunlight in a certain area. That's definitely something.
Or you want to do a little, but you don't want to do a lot. So instead of constructing raised beds or digging up the backyard, you get a couple of grow bags from rootmaker.com and use coupon code TWVG and save 10% on your order. And you construct those on the back, in the backyard or next to the fence.
Right. So container gardening, I know people think, oh, it's just, for people with apartments or who don't have a big yard, but it is a great option for many people.
Many people have all of those and do container gardening as well.
Right.
Raised beds and a little more of an investment, whether you purchase a raised bed from Rootmaker, you make your own, elevated or on the ground, whatever the case is, pretty easy one. Straw bales. Some people are not aware that you can grow in straw bales. Author of the Straw Bale Garden Book, the complete garden book, Joe Karsten, he's been on the program every year of this program. He talks about how you can grow in a straw bale, and it's not just put the straw bale on the ground and plant it. There's a conditioning process that goes through. You can certainly search our website for his interview if you want to learn more about that particular method. Hydroponics and aquaponics. These are two that utilize water, but in a very, very different means. Hydroponics uses chemicals, or they are chemicals. Let's call it what it is. They're not necessarily organic, but it's water that you mix the chemicals in, and the water cycles under and through the roots of the plants, and the plants uptake what they need. Now, also it's
kind of like something you would feed the water of the plants of your fish tank, basically. Right. So it's not like you're putting.
Well, there's two types. There's a pump type where it pumps through, and there's also a stagnant, passive hydroponics where the water's stagnant and the plants grow in that means. Aquaponics, on the other hand, is the method of using water in that similar type of situation, typically outside of your home, and then they use fish in the water, and they pump the fish water through the plants, and the waste of the fish feed the plants, and it's kind of a 2-for-1 deal there. And based on the type of fish, some people will harvest the fish after a certain duration and eat them. And it's a kind of a little cycle there of things. Now let's talk about, right before we get to hugelkultur, let's talk about we can indoor grow. Indoor growing can be done very simply with a south-facing window, underneath a Happy Leaf LED grow light. They are made in America, very powerful, one of the best things that we've ever gotten a hold of. And you can grow anything indoors, literally anything with a Happy Leaf LED light because of the light spectrum and the power and the understanding of what the plant's requiring by the creator of the Happy Leaf. So we've grown all kinds of things indoors with that light, from seed starting all the way up to beans and radishes and tomatoes and that type of thing. And they've got a great bunch of videos on their website. Now we can get to the hugelkultur. What is a hugelkultur? People think that's like some kind of German hot dog or something, maybe.
Well, I think it is a German word, I'm pretty sure. But it's a horticultural technique where you take a mound constructed from decaying wood, debris, and other compostable biomass material, and what you do is you get this like raised bed.
Well, a hill.
Like a hill.
Yeah.
And
you don't, and people will actually,
it will help your soil fertility.
right. People will construct this above ground and then they basically an arch of soil.
Yeah.
Other people will dig down and bury the wood and then create that arch. What is occurring in layman's terms is as the wood rots, it absorbs like a sponge. And then when the soil needs the water, it releases the water to the soil and the plants are growing on both sides of the arched hill. Now, these can be very small, 1 foot high to 3 foot high. And even the Native Americans and other Europeans would come over and build 30 or 40 or 50 foot high mounds and just basically have a garden on the side of a mountain, essentially, is what it would be kind of looking like. But it's all soil, and the matter is breaking down, feeding the soil as well as releasing water into the soil.
Right. And wood itself since it's very porous, it absorbs a lot of water, and so it does have that sponge-like effect, especially as it breaks down.
And then we have the back to Eden garden method, which everybody kind of thinks that, okay, you just throw some wood chips on the ground and you plant in them, and that's simply not how the procedure is supposed to be exercised. The wood chips, you put a substantial depth amount of wood chips, 8, 12, 13 inches, and then you let it sit there for a duration of time, and the lower levels begin to break down, and then you plant kind of in that material when you have broke down material. Now, if you use wood chips and then you planted them, you're basically just using wood chips as mulch. You're not utilizing the actual practice of back to Eden, a gardening method.
Right. So, yeah, you basically what happens is that the wood chips are breaking down. They're kind of like hugelkultur. They're breaking down, they're decaying, they're becoming different biomass, and then you have this effective growing medium area, whatever you want to call it. And it's I shouldn't say it's the same as hugelkultur, but it's a similar concept. It's creating your own fertile soil that is nice to grow in.
And the brief description which we are giving these is just a brief description. There's a lot of studying and a lot of videos in which from reputable YouTubers and other websites in which will instruct you on the proper procedures and steps in which to be successful at all of these types of methods.
So another one we have here is called Walipini. I think that's how you
I would pronounce it. Walipini.
So basically,
and what is this technique of growing food?
You're basically growing an underground greenhouse.
So it's like a pit. You've extracted a certain square or large, whatever the size. You've extracted it, and it's an 8, 9, 10 foot deep pit with a roof over it.
Yeah.
And then you've taken that topsoil which would have been on top, and you bring it down and you put it at the base.
And that keeps it warm.
And it keeps it warm. It's a controlled environment.
I'm just thinking about, how we grow in my mom's backyard.
Right.
We say, Mom, we're going to do this and see what she says.
Essentially, it's what it is. It's you dig a basement and you put a greenhouse roof over top of it, and it keeps the temperature during the coldest portions of the winter about 60, 65 degrees.
But then during summer, do you do this during summer?
You can do it during summer. However, the temperature at that depth is still going to be moderate. You're probably not going to be able to grow the pumpkins and the tomatoes and the watermelons because there's not enough heat. Because in the basement all year long it's cool.
It's cool, right?
Yeah. So this is a great method to utilize. Now maybe we've never practiced this or don't know anyone who does. Maybe you remove the roof and allow the heat to go down into it at that point. I don't know, but it's a really unique way, especially in the northern climates, to grow during the winter months by just digging a hole or a basement essentially and putting a roof on top of it.
Right. I think it's very unique as well, and that comes from South America.
Right.
So then we have the greenhouse / low tunnel, high tunnel, or cold frame.
Right.
Gardening. So greenhouse is typically more of a structure versus a high tunnel, which is a structure, but it's made out of some sort of framing with plastic.
It's some type of hoop in some instances.
Yeah. And you can usually walk into it.
Right.
Low tunnel is less.
It's smaller and less climate controllable. The high tunnel, you usually have some means of more control over the temperature, whether hot or cold in it. Then a greenhouse is a greenhouse. We're all familiar with that.
And then cold frames.
Cold frames are wooden structures or devices sat on top of raised beds in which to extend the season, whether early or late, in order to trick the soil and the plants thinking that it's warmer than what it really is. So that's just a handful of some common, and maybe some of them that you were not aware of existed when the types of unique growing situations. And we practice many of those at our garden. You can find those on our videos on the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com website, as well as the same name on YouTube. Ground gardening, container gardening, raised bed, straw bale. We've dabbled in hydroponics. We've dabbled in cold frames and low tunnels. So we've tried a little bit of all of that as well. So,
for more information, please visit the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com.